Today I'm going to be showing you how to change the front hub and front CV joint on a 2010 Ford Taurus front wheel drive 3.5 liter. So you don't have to do these together, but I figured since I'm already in there replacing the axle, we're going to go ahead and put a new hub on it too, because it had just a little bit of play in it. So we're going to be showing you how to do both of those. So if you need to just know how to do the hub, you'll be able to see that. If you need to know how to do the CV axle on the passenger side, you're also going to see how to do that. So let's go ahead and get into it. First thing we're going to need is a 19 millimeter. Take this wheel off, get in there and see what's going on. First I'm going to show you why we need a new CV axle, and then you'll see how we're going to get it out. So as you can probably see, maybe, our boot is split and it's slinging grease all over the place. We've got grease everywhere. So we're going to have to get this axle out of here. We're also going to go ahead and do the hub while we're in here. So let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to get this wheel off here and see what we got to do. Let's go ahead and get this wheel off here. See what we're working with. Alright, so our bracket bolts are going to be right here and up here. Take these two out. This whole thing's going to come out of our way. Hang that up and we'll move on from there. So let's go ahead and get the socket for these two and break them loose and then zip them out. So they're an 18, so we're going to go ahead and break them loose. Now we got both those bolts out there. Let's go ahead and see if we can get this pried off of here. Not too shabby. Super good on these lines to let them hang like that. Nope. We have, I believe, a T40 right here for the rotor. Yep. A little bit rough to go in there, but just grab your hammer. Make sure you're good and seated in there. Easiest way to do it is to get you an impact and just slightly tap on it. You don't want to go full bore or else you're going to strip it out. So just real easy like. That'll break it free so you can get that out of there. Now that we got that out, this rotor will slide right off. Or you'll have to beat it a little bit if it's stuck. Honestly, I'm surprised that came off as easy as it did. But either way, let's go on. So we get this out of our way. Next thing we're going to have to do, regardless of whether you're replacing the hub or the axle, you're going to have to take this nut off. So we're going to find out what size this is and get this knocked off of here. So we got us a 32 here. Get that right off there. And you're going to want to push this axle through. Seems like we're lucky and it's not froze up in there. So I think that's going to work out for us. So luckily it's free in here. As you can see. So that's going to slide right out the back when we get ready for that. So the first thing I'm going to do, since I'm replacing the hub, is I'm going to go ahead and get this hub whacked off. And then that's going to make it easier to get this axle out of there. We're going to have to also pull the control arm off of the lower ball joint or something. We'll figure that out as we go. But first, let's get this out of the way. So if you're doing just the hub, you're not going to have to go on past this part where we take this off and then you'll just put the new one back on. But either way, let's get behind there, get these four nuts out, get this hub removed, then we can see what all we got to take apart to get this axle out. So back here we have our torn boot, which is why we're replacing that. Up here's our hub. So we got 1 bolt, 2 bolt, 3 bolts, and 4 bolts. So we're going to get those 4 bolts out. Beware of that sensor right there. That's a sensor. Do not hit that. That is part of the knuckle. So we're going to leave that in there. We don't want to break that when we're taking any of this stuff out. So let's go ahead and get these 4 bolts moved out real quick. So we're going to go ahead and take our 15, break all 4 of these loose real quick. Do the front, do the rear. What I'm going to do is switch to my electric ratchet, make things a little bit quicker. Now we have all 4 bolts out. We're going to get out here, smack on this, try to break it free. So now all 4 bolts are out. This is going to come off this way. But through rust and corrosion, it don't just pull out. That would be nice, but that's not going to happen. So you find the biggest hammer you own. And this one's actually going a little easy. I like that. I don't know if you can see it, but you can see we're starting to get a crack there. It's because it's coming apart. And trust me, if you check out my other video to where I'm doing the rear on this car, it did not go that easy. But if all you're doing is replacing the hub on the front of a front wheel drive Taurus 2010 to 2019, you're already half done. That's not too bad. But unfortunately, we're going a little deeper than that. So, if you want to see just how to do this, go ahead and skip to whatever the video says right there, and that'll be when we're going back together with this. Or stick around, see how we get this thing out of there. So it looks like, to get this axle out of here, probably going to have to try to disconnect it from the lower ball joint. That is not going to be fun. As you can see, all the rust might not go very well, but we got to do what we got to do. So let's go ahead and try to get that off there. So we got a 15/16 down here. We're going to try to get that off and separate this lower control arm. Get that to drop. That way we can kind of swing this just a hair to get this out of here. Alright, so we got it broke loose. If you can see that. I love all this axle grease, it's so fun. Pause not.
This suit is black. Pause not.
Well, as you see, the whole thing's spinning, so we're going to have to get a smaller wrench in here to hold that while we turn. Well, might be able to get it to break on loose. You only need seconds, we can. Switch the wrench off of it. I think we should be able to get it by hand now. So we got that off. You might need to tap a little bit in here to get this loose, but then we got to try to pry this down with a big old pry bar. As you can see, get a pry bar in here. Get that pop down out of the way. It'll come back up. So as you can see, when we got that out of the way, this is able to move. You can grab the axle back here, pull a little bit, slip it right out. Didn't even have to take sway bar link off or the tie rod end, and we should be able to get it out of here from there. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove this little panel here, get it out of our way. We got 2 bolts up here to take out the carrier bearing, and then we should be able to slide this right out and slide the new one back in. So let's go ahead and get these all out, pop these out, trim tool or whatever you got, and Phillips head screwdriver. So now, as you can see, rip that, so that's great. Don't do that, obviously. And just fold that down, and then right back there, past that belt, we got 2 nuts. Here. So we got our 2 nuts off with the carrier bearing, or whatever you want to call that thing. Now that we're off, we can slide it out. Nice and simple. Slides right out of there, and as you can see, that's the end that goes into the transmission. So let's go ahead and grab the new one. So I verified they are the same part. We got our new one here. We're going to work this back in, being careful not to hit anything or mess anything up. So I'm going to go ahead and go under the car, make sure we get this axle slipped in good and straight. So we're sitting in the transmission. We've got to line our bearing up. And work it in. Now that that's back in, go ahead and get your nuts. They go back in here. Run those in. So hopefully you can see the nuts back there. Woo! You don't want righty-tighty to turn into righty-loosey, so be careful. Yeah, those are good and tight. So now, what we got to do is we got to get this axle back into here and get that reattached. So what we're going to do is we're going to push in on this, try to kind of angle it, bend it that way. And then we're going to pull out here and get it back in there. Being careful of that sensor we talked about. Now we got to get this back down, so we're going to run a big pry bar in here and crank it down. Now we're clear. Move this back into place. Make sure to line your ball joint up. There we go. Got it about started. Hear that pop in? Slammed it right back up in there. Now we got to get that nut back on. That goes right here under the axle. Get it started by hand. Make sure you're not cross-threaded. Unfortunately, that little thing in there spinning. Let's try running our pry bar up this way and putting some pressure on going up to keep that from spinning so we can tighten this nut. And it looks like that's going to work. You got to pull up pretty hard or it starts to slip. We really just need to get it on enough to get that wrench back on the stud. Maybe we can work the socket in. Okay. It didn't like it, but we made it work. So now, make sure our ratchet's going the right way. So let's go ahead and get this worked around to where it hits there and holds. Now we should be able to get it down. As you can see, the socket's not moving, but the nut is, so it means we're in the right direction. Alright, so we're starting to snug up finally. Alright, we're mostly tight. Let's go ahead and try to work our ratchet off here. Now let's give it one last nice little snug. All right, done. So now we got the lower ball joint back on. Axle is in. Retaining nuts are in. All we got to do is put that hub we took off back on, which if you didn't take the hub off, you would just be working that in and putting the axle nut on and brakes back together or however you did it. So we're going to go ahead and straighten this wheel back out. I don't know if you could tell or not, but if you look right here, these are wider apart than these. These two holes are closer together. So, therefore, these two are closer together. These are farther apart. So, it's going to go with further apart down there. So, we got to feed this axle through here while guiding it in the hole. Once you get it on the splines and work it in a little, spin that bearing to where you're lined up. And just like that, it's set in nice and smooth. We're going to get the 4 bolts, run them in the back, and then we'll put that nut on. So when we put that nut on, it'll pull our axle tight to our hub. We got our 4 bolts that we took out in the beginning. We're going to get those back in real quick. You want to get them all started first, so I do the easiest one first, see if we can get it started. You might have to rock the hub a little bit. That one seems to have started. I think we're good and lined up. Now we'll try another one. Like I say, you may have to wiggle this hub or twist it a little bit. Always want to start them by hand. You don't want to rip those threads out. So we got 2 in. So now that they're all started, we can snug them down, get it pulled in good and flush. And then we'll crank them down. We got our 15. Alright, so now they're all snug. We're going to make sure they're good and tight. Because I'm going to tighten it until my ratchet bends or my elbow pops. Alright, the hub is nice and tight. That's all good. Now we're going to come back out here, put that nut on to lock it in. So our new axle came with a new nut. You're not supposed to reuse the old one. If I had to, I would. Put that on there good and tight. Get our handy dandy number 32 in impact. Drive it on. Make sure we're pulling it in good. We've got about a ½ inch to go. So now, our axle, good and tight. We can turn it. Turns the other wheel because we have an axle in it. So now, we're just going to put the brakes back together. First, we have our hole here. If you can see that, that's where that little bolt went in. So we find our hole in our rotor, line it up, make sure we're sitting on the hub square. You don't got to get it over tight, it's not a lug nut, just get it tight, holds that on. Now that our rotor's on, we can take this down. We're going to try to finagle this back on to these 2 bolt holes. We've only got 2 bolts left. We're pretty much done. So let's go ahead and release it. Make sure you don't twist your caliper bracket the wrong way and kink your line. Make sure your bleeder is facing up. And we're going to try to slip this right back in here without having to take it apart. Once you get one started, that'll help the other one line up. Sometimes you got to wiggle it a little. You can go ahead and tighten those. Then, as always, I like to make sure everything's good and tight. Yeah. You don't want to forget your straps either. Get those out of there. And just like that, we're done. We have brakes, not locked up. We got a hub. We have a new axle. All we got to do, put the wheel back on, ship it. So that's going to do it for today. So hopefully that'll help you on your 2010 to 2019 Ford Taurus if you need to replace either the front hub or the front passenger axle. Driver axle is actually a lot easier, but either way, it's basically the same, other than it won't have that little carrier with the 2 bolts that you got to take out. It'll just slide right on out. So hopefully this was informational to you. Hopefully you all enjoyed it, and hopefully you hit that subscribe button, and I'll catch you all on the next one. Have a good one. The hell are you all still doing here? Told you the video's over. You're just gonna keep hanging around in the shop? Might as well start clicking on some stuff down there. I don't know, help me out a little bit. But I'm going to be turning these lights off soon, so you might want to be getting to it. I'm heading out.